Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and chief executive officer of Tome and founder and former chief executive officer of Livio, Jake Sigal.
Thank you. First, thanks to the Detroit Regional Chamber for having me. It's really an honor to be an entrepreneur and be in front of y'all and talking about our story. So in 2006, my wife and I moved from Providence, Rhode Island in a renovated steel loft to Ferndale. We received an opportunity to work as a product, or I was working as a product manager for Delphi, making XM satellite radios for cars. And not the ones that went inside the cars, well, not installed inside of a car, but the ones you'd buy in a Best Buy or Circuit City. I always had a passion for music and technology, and I'm a third-generation entrepreneur, but I wanted to get some big business experience. And that's what made the move to Detroit make sense for us. Well, in 2007, Delphi was finishing up the restructuring, and we knew that satellite radio was a little bit on the ropes. There was this thing called internet radio that came about. And as a music and tech guy, and I've worked my entire career involving music and technology, I wanted to kind of be on the cutting edge. For my entire career, I've always focused on that and something I really enjoyed. So I came across this little company called Pandora. And in 2007, I heard about these guys, and I was like, this is really cool. You can skip tracks. I can listen to my favorite electronic house music anywhere I have internet access. And I thought, people are going to be taking internet radio and taking it with them on the go. In the same way that AM and FM transformed into the 8-track, which turned into the cassette deck, which turned into the CD, which then was satellite, and now standard feature internet radio in cars. So I had this idea about what Pandora could be. At the time, Pandora was really on the ropes. They had, I think, a few million users at the time. Their CEO and founder, Tim Westergren, was soliciting their fans, the users, to write into their congressmen, their senators, to keep internet radio alive. And I saw opportunity. It was the beginning of the Great Recession. I knew that satellite radio was shifting. And I said, you know what? I think I can do something here. So I quit my job. And out of my guest bedroom home in Ferndale, I started Livio with this idea of creating a radio for Pandora, the size of a toaster, that my mom could use without having to call me for help to get access to internet radio. And for those of you that know me, I love to talk about products that my parents can use quickly without asking for help. So we spent the next 2 years making these internet radios. We were selling them at Sears, at Costco. We had a #1 selling radio SKU at Amazon in the consumer electronics industry. When I started raising money for this in Michigan, I was told I would fail. I was told, look, kid, I was 26 years old. You are too young to do this. The amount of working capital you're going to need is just not available. And we only invest in biotech and automotive, and you're neither. So, good luck. So what I did is I got on a plane, went over to Asia, found some manufacturers that were losing orders from the big companies like the Sonys and Panasonics of the world during the Great Recession. And I cut a deal with them. I said, hey, I've got this really cool product. I've got this awesome company. They're going to market this thing. I've got customers that are willing to bring in the product. Let's go. So we had a good run with that. Then came along the iPhone. I mean, the iPhone actually came along in 2007, but it really came along. And Android phones really came along in about 2009, 2010. We had a kind of an aha moment with the company that the future was not going to be dedicated hardware appliances. It was going to be software running on mobile phones. And somehow, as I left the automotive industry at Delphi, I managed to get myself right back into it by making software to bring these apps from smartphones, like Pandora, like TuneIn, like all these great internet radio apps, safely into the dashboard. And we knew that it was something that needed to be done because I liked doing it, my friends liked doing it. Nobody else even thought about plugging a phone into a car. I mean, people had their 30-pin iPod jacks, and they would, you maybe use the aux-in cable. But the idea of getting access to 90,000 internet radio streams just seemed why would anybody want to do that? Well, we already have satellite radio. You got hundreds of channels. Why would you want that? And it wasn't about the 90,000 channels. It was about the 5 that you love. So then again, we did a pivot into something that we were told just couldn't be done. And it was a bad idea. And don't you realize that there are software companies already out there, and the big automotive companies have a 7-year development cycle, you'll never get in? Well, we were able to get in. I couldn't have done this without a great team. So in the early days, it was really about product development, trying to get, maximize your gross margin dollars. But as I moved forward in the business, I realized that it was less about the product development and less about the product marketing, and more about the team of people we put together. So I started focusing on what it would take to build an A team, an A-plus team. And what I found is we had to find people that were hungry and were really frustrated with their current jobs. They wanted the ability to make a significant impact and difference in what they were building. They wanted to know not only they had the tools to do their job, but what they were doing and why they were doing it, and they could make a difference. And that's something that I've been seeing a lot of larger companies focusing on now, is how you can have your staff make a difference. So when we grew and obviously got an office, we couldn't fit my entire company in my house, we decided, where should we go? And at the time, we closed a deal with Gia and VC here in Michigan, and it was a great opportunity for us to grow and expand. And we said, why don't we stick around in Ferndale? It had a really good opportunity, had a really good mix of kind of the work-life culture balance, and it made a lot of sense. So some of the benefits that we were able to offer people is a kind of a work-live balance, where if anyone's worked in a startup, you know that you get to work half days. You just have to choose which 12 hours of the day you want to work. And that kind of a lifestyle isn't for everybody, but the ability to be close to home and not spend an hour in a car driving back and forth is the kind of thing that we all in startups look for. So we can spend less time getting to work and more time being at work and being at home, and you don't have to have that transition. We also look for a city and a community that would embrace the culture. And if you're in a company doing music, Metro Detroit in general is just a great opportunity, and Ferndale has a very rich culture for that space. So as our business evolved a little bit, we were looking at, okay, well, where's the next step? So we were shipping product inside a General Motors vehicle, and it was our first OEM victory. We had probably half a dozen different vehicles that we were working with through Tier 1 suppliers, putting our software to safely get those iPhone apps and Android apps into cars. Well, it came to a certain point in time we realized that everyone's starting to figure this out now. People know that apps are going to be in cars, and the whole driver safety legislation from NHTSA is going on. And we're like, it's probably time that we do a strong partnership. Well, it was also about the same time I started getting phone calls from large companies saying, hey, we know you guys are VC backed, we'd like to buy you guys. Well, I thought about what I wanted to be when I grow up, and I really wanted to be an entrepreneur, and I wanted to run my business forever. But what I realized is that we got to a point in the company where we had to do a joint venture partnership. We had to get bigger quickly. And that's when Ford came in. So when the opportunity, and I met Ford originally, they're in Dearborn, but I happened to meet Ford at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas. That's how the tech industry works. It's not so much about local, it's about being around the masses of people at these massive electronics shows like CES. So when I was meeting with Ford, and we were literally sandwiched between the automotive section and the iPhone section, it made total sense. They're like, hey, you guys have some great technology. You see the world the same way we do about apps coming into cars, and it made a lot of sense. When we started working the deal prior to the acquisition, one of the big things that was important to me was how can we keep the culture? And I realized during that time that the challenge that we faced in this area wasn't really about product development. It was about culture and retaining talent. So post-acquisition, there's a couple things that I've figured out. The first is that people that are graduating from our colleges and universities, they feel like going out to the West Coast, the Valley, or going over to New York, the Alley, is a lot sexier than sticking around. And partially it's because maybe it's where they're from, but it's just we didn't have that cool culture to offer. The second thing is that there's people that are my age that are having families that have grandparents back here in this area that are looking for a reason to come back, but they don't want to give up what they had before. So out of that entire experience, I kind of learned that it's about the people and the culture. And in order to develop something a step further, I decided to, in my tech world, start a new software company called Tome, which is a super stealthy startup. We're not talking about that. But on a side project, I was like, why don't we do something cool in the area? So I came up with this concept, which my partners were calling One Detroit. And the idea that we're all in this together, and that there are no geographical lines when you look at a technical community. So I'm doing a real estate project in Ferndale now. We're bringing in over 100,000 square feet of tech office space, working with an all-star team, and working with the community itself, working with the community, with the residents, and working with the city. So as part of this One Detroit picture, I feel like I can do my part and try to bring what we learned out of Livio and through the entire Ford process and allow other companies, and not startups, second stage, large companies, the ability to retain top talent, to create that work-live balance, to be able to have an area that's very close proximity. So if you live in Clarkston, you're not driving an hour and a half down. But it's not for everybody. As part of what we feel One Detroit, it's not just about what we're doing at Ferndale. It's about what's going on in Birmingham, in Southfield, in Troy, in Detroit, in Midtown. It's putting it all together. I'm really getting tired, and I'm not from Detroit. I'm really getting tired of hearing about the you guys aren't from Detroit, there's this line, that line, because in technology, we don't see lines. So I'd encourage everybody to think about, with their business and with their community around technology, is there are no lines within what we do here. We're all part of One Detroit. We all fly out of the same airport, and we're all in this together. So I encourage you to take a hard look at your goals with your company, with your